Whether you're ready or not, the 2023 F1 season is gearing up for an explosive start. Even after all the drama we witnessed last season, you should expect even more action coming soon. Why? Well, the FIA has some new regulations for the upcoming season. As with any new F1 season, the FIA will introduce new regulations or modify existing ones. Now, some of these modifications may benefit some teams while harming others, but it's the risk that they must all face. So stay tuned for a breakdown of the major changes for F1 in the upcoming season. Now, it'll be a blast when the 2023 Formula 1 World Champion begins in March in Bahrain. From what we hear, this will be the sport's longest season. Max Verstappen is aiming for his third world title in a row, while Charles Leclerc and George Russell will be hoping to win their first. Lewis Hamilton is still aiming for a record-breaking 8th title. But will Mercedes get the W14 right? They say it would be a car full of surprises, but could the new rule changes damage their title run? Has anyone ever asked what makes the FIA need to keep revising the rules in the first place? The truth is that F1's technical standards are constantly changing because the FIA must make revisions to keep the teams in line. There's usually a lot of drama around enforcing a big regulatory change, such as the one we just had before the 2022 season. More importantly, these adjustments will go into effect for the following season and beyond, which can make for some entertaining racing. The biggest alterations for 2023 have centered on the vehicle's floor, owing to the controversial attitude of the teams concerning some cars porpoising and bouncing. Many teams feel the FIA are changing the regulations for the wrong reasons. As a result, there's been a back and forth between the governing body and the 10 F1 constructors to find a way around the changes, with the FIA needing to modify its approach concerning its earlier recommendations. It originally insisted on raising the outer portion of the floor by 25mm and applying more rigorous load tests to ensure that the floor does not flex too much. This would limit the ability of the F1 teams to run the edge of the floor closer to the track's surface. They usually do this to get the increased aerodynamic performance available from this maneuver. As a compromise, the standards have been changed to reflect a 15mm increase in height at the floor's outside edge for 2023. There would be no more than a 5mm vertical deflection when a 250 Newton force is applied downwards, and no more than 5mm vertical deflection when a 250 Newton load is applied upwards. For 2022, these values were 8mm and 12mm respectively, requiring teams to incorporate greater stiffness to pass the required tests. Changes to the shape of the floor's edge have also been made in order to tie up any loose ends that the FIA believes may have slipped through the net during 2022. Now, on closer inspection, there seem to be many more changes to the regulations. So let's look at what they've done with the front wings. Concerning the front wing, the FIA has both given and taken away, as measures have been taken further to restrict the design of the flap and end plate juncture. This all but rules out the extremely complex design Mercedes introduced at the Canadian Grand Prix. This design, they say, is expected to provide more outwash than was originally intended when the new regulations were created. For those that are curious, what they mean by outwash is an attempt to channel vortices and air away from the disrupted features of the car, such as the front wheels. They do this using the front wing end plates and elements so that turbulence from the wheels does not destroy the vortices and unseal the sides of the car. Now it's time to talk about your favourite part of the car, the engine. In every season, each F1 team is authorised to use only a certain number of engine components each season. Wear and tear, failures and collisions can all force a team to replace some of these components before a race weekend, occasionally exceeding the legal limit. If a team is forced to go over their season allowance, the vehicle in question will get a grid penalty equal to the number of engine components that have been changed. While this appears to be a fair punishment for teams that exceed their component number, teams have recently been accused of making tactical engine adjustments, choosing to serve these practically unavoidable penalties at tracks where overcoming the penalty would be simpler. A driver, for example, would have a much higher chance of achieving a strong finish if they received a grid penalty in Brazil, where overtaking on the straight is easy, rather than in Monaco, where overtaking is nearly impossible. The FIA has suggested that they may want to amend these rules in order to prevent these tactical adjustments, and they've begun discussions with sporting directors to try to find a solution. The The sporting group has proposed that the best method to address this issue is to impose a penalty that must be served during the race rather than before it. Teams may be obliged to pay a time penalty of up to 30 seconds during the race, depending on how many components they've altered, causing drivers to lose track position during a Grand Prix, making it extremely difficult to reclaim the lost places. It's also been argued that a points punishment may be the appropriate approach to deal with such an offence, with points immediately deducted from a driver's total as soon as they exceed the parts limit. A formal recommendation addressing these proposed revisions will be presented by the end of January, allowing adequate time for the new engine regulations to take effect when the 2023 season begins in March. Now, it's time to talk about what the FIA is doing to prevent crashes. You may be wondering if there would be any changes to the roll hoop, which has been the subject of a lot of debate. Given the magnitude of Zhou Guanyu's crash at the British Grand Prix, the roll hoop's design is being refined and the stresses it must withstand are now being raised. Due to increased demands in its shape 935mm above the reference plane, these new regulations will most likely require some of the teams to redesign the roll hoop structure, while any parts that are constructed above this should be able to resist a 15G impact with the ground and be made of an abrasion-resistant material. The roll hoop must now be able to withstand forces delivered to it from the front as well as the forces applied from the back. So, what else is new for the 2023 Formula 1 regulations? In the last season, footage obtained by the visor cam has received widespread appreciation and is expected to become a regular feature of the broadcast in the future. The FIA has increased the number of camera positions from 6 to 7, including one facing forward within the driver's helmet. Also, the weight of the cars are actually decreasing, with the pre-2022 minimum starting target weight of 796 kilograms scheduled to be reinstated. However, the power unit's minimum weight has increased because some of the accompanying pipework is now contained inside its perimeter. To avoid a situation like the one we had last season, where the fuel is regarded as too cool, the standards have been changed to accept a lower temperature threshold. All fuel tanks must have a pressure relief valve to prevent over-pressurization, and the maximum internal pressure applied on the fuel bladder must not exceed 1 bar. F1 will also be experimenting with tyres in qualifying. For 2 qualifiers during the season, all drivers must use just hard tyres in Q1, mediums in Q2, and softs in Q3. Pirelli CEO Mario Zola believes it's more sustainable for the tyre company. It's its favourite scenario, he says. We're talking about toughness. With the current restrictions, you must be cautious with the soft tyre during qualifying and cannot use it throughout the race. With the new regulations, you still have 6 sets for the race if you designate 2 sets of hards for Q1, 2 sets of mediums for Q2, and 2 sets of softs for Q3. That's perfect. They save a lot of tyres this way while staying away from disrupting the F1 show. You should also expect a lot of sprint races in 2023 as the number has doubled. We'll have sprint races in Qatar, Austria, Belgium, the USA, Azerbaijan, and Brazil. I don't know about you, but it seems the stakes for the 2023 season can't be any higher. So, do you think the latest regulations for 2023 would be good for the sport? Let us know what your predictions are in the comments down below.